Unlock mental clarity with the power of silence. When all the external noise fades away, we finally begin to hear ourselves. But this voice is not always the whisper of the mind. Sometimes it is the breath of the soul, barely noticeable like a morning mist. We so rarely remain alone with silence that we have almost forgotten its flavor. In our world, sound has become the background, noise the default, and silence, strangely, provokes anxiety. We flee from silence as if from a dark room, not realizing that light often waits for us right there. And today, we will enter that space where the healing and transformative power of silence resides. Surprisingly, when scientists began to study how silence affects the brain, they encountered a paradox. In silence, the brain does not rest. On the contrary, crucial neural networks activate, such as the default mode network, which is involved in self-reflection, memory processing, and creative thinking. In the year 2013, a team led by neurologist Joseph Morphy at Duke University discovered that just 2 minutes of absolute silence could stimulate the growth of new neurons in the hippocampus, the part of the brain responsible for memory, emotion, and learning. This finding was a breakthrough. Silence turned out to be not merely restful, but a catalyst for regeneration. Yet even long before scientific proof, people intuitively sensed the sacred nature of silence. The ancient Greeks believed that silence was the space where the voice of wisdom spoke. Heraclitus claimed that hidden harmony is better than visible. Pythagoras led his students toward truth through long periods of silence. His disciples were not allowed to speak for 5 years, learning first to listen to others, then to themselves, and finally, to something beyond words. This understanding was also present in Eastern traditions. In Zen Buddhism, silence is not the pause between thoughts, it is the reality itself. The great Lao Tzu wrote, "Silence is a source of great strength. Within that silence, empires of the spirit were born, inner walls crumbled, and hearts were cleansed." In the 20th century, writer Albert Camus once noted, "In the depth of winter, I finally learned that within me there lay an invincible summer." Silence is the winter of the mind, and if we are not afraid of this emptiness, one day we may discover spring within. Modern science also confirms the beneficial effects of silence. In a study by Lucier and Spector, it was found that 2 minutes of silence reduced stress more effectively than listening to relaxing music. Heart rate soared, cortisol levels dropped. The body entered a state of deep relaxation, and the brain moved into a phase of integration. Max Lucier, a Swiss psychologist and philosopher best known for the Lucier color test, and Edward Spector, a researcher in psychophysiology and sensory deprivation, conducted a pivotal study in the mid-20th century. Participants were placed in a completely soundproof and visually isolated environment, absolute darkness and silence, with all sensory stimulation removed. The goal was to understand how the human mind reacts to the absence of all external input, especially sound. The results were remarkable. After just a few minutes in total silence, most participants began to feel anxiety or disorientation. After 10 to 15 minutes, they reported hearing their own heartbeat and the rush of blood. Some began to experience visual or auditory hallucinations, along with the sense that time was stretching or losing its structure. After 30 to 60 minutes, anxiety often intensified, and participants felt a growing need for stimulation. Some began to move, sing, or talk to themselves. These findings showed that silence and sensory deprivation could be stressful for an unprepared mind. However, the same studies concluded that when the mind is consciously prepared, silence becomes a powerful tool for healing, for cleansing awareness, and for working with the subconscious. Max Lucier later argued that silence reveals our true internal conflicts, the ones we ignore in noise and distraction. These insights laid the foundation for modern meditative and therapeutic methods, including silent retreats, flotation therapy, and mindfulness capsules. Today, silence is used in cognitive behavioral therapy, psychosomatic medicine, and in creative labs for writers, artists, and composers. Silence helps us not only hear ourselves, but also truly hear others. Psychological studies show that those who practice intentional silence become more empathetic, more attentive, more open. We often think that connection happens through words, but in reality, it happens through presence, through the pause, through the willingness to be there without filling all the space. Carl Gustav Jung, the renowned psychiatrist, once said that silence is a great revelation. When a person is no longer hiding behind words, they become who they truly are. Silence is a mirror. It says nothing, but shows everything. History remembers many who drew strength from silence. Ludwig van Beethoven lost his hearing and still composed music, relying not on external sound but on inner silence. He wrote, "Music is the silence between the notes." Perhaps that is why his compositions still resonate deeply within the soul. Or Henri Matisse, who, nearly blind in old age, created exquisite cutouts from colored paper, immersing himself in silence like in paint. Or Nikola Tesla, who loved to sit alone, saying he needed silence to hear ideas being born. What happens to us when we allow ourselves to remain in silence? At first there is unease, then our senses sharpen. And finally, a delicate vibration of peace begins to emerge. This is almost like alchemy. In silence, different regions of the brain, usually quiet, begin to interact. Integration begins. The self starts to stitch itself together from scattered parts. We become more whole. One of the most powerful methods of working with silence is sensory deprivation. It is a practice in which all external stimuli, sound, light, movement, are minimized. A person is placed in a specially designed chamber, alone with nothing but their own presence. Many feel discomfort at first, but those who move through it describe the experience as a return home, a return to the authentic self. There are also gentler approaches: silent meditation, conscious breathing, walks without a phone, retreats where no words are spoken. Even the simple habit of spending just 10 minutes a day without sound, without speaking, without a screen, can gradually reshape our perception. Psychologists often recommend creating a zone of silence at home. It might be a chair by the window where no music plays and no one talks, just presence, just stillness. Silence is not the absence of communication. It is a deeper form of it. When words no longer distract us, truly meaningful contact begins. In relationships, in friendship, in love, being able to stay in silence next to another person, that is intimacy. Of course, there is another side. Silence can feel heavy, especially for someone who fears their inner world. But therein lies its strength. Silence brings to the surface what is hidden. It allows us to see and to release through awareness, through gentleness, through presence. It is in silence that we come to understand we are not our thoughts, not our emotions, not our roles. We are the space between. We are the silence that listens. When the noise settles, the voice of the soul becomes audible. It does not seek proof. It simply is. And within it, there is all the knowledge we need. Famous neuroscientist Andrew Newberg wrote that silence and meditative practices not only enhance attention, but also strengthen the connection between the prefrontal cortex and the limbic system. This helps us regulate emotions, reduce anxiety, and deepen empathy. Silence makes us more human. If you're finding this video meaningful, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. What does silence mean to you? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your reflections. The suggestions are simple. Start your day with 5 minutes of silence. Don't reach for your phone. Just sit, breathe. Notice what's happening inside. During the day, try to practice mindful silence for 1 or 2 minutes after each important conversation. Let the words settle within you. Allow yourself not to respond immediately. And in the evening, try letting go of the background. No music, no news, just the room, just you, and the silence, which is always more than it seems. It is in silence that true discoveries begin, not only external, but internal. In the quiet, we don't find answers, we find the questions, the ones that mark the start of the journey. Silence is where ideas are born, where creativity begins, meaning, presence, and perhaps even love. In a world that constantly screams, silence is a revolution. Silence surrounds us, if we allow it to. It does not demand effort, it does not knock on doors. It waits, patiently, for us to grow tired of the noise. In the neuroscience labs of the University of California, researchers found that just 2 hours of silence a day could trigger the growth of new neurons in the hippocampus, the part of the brain responsible for memory and learning. This discovery seemed paradoxical. Silence, a passive and empty state, was acting as a stimulant for growth. But that is precisely the point. In silence, the brain is freed from the pressure of incoming signals and turns inward, entering a mode of restoration, integration, renewal. And perhaps the most paradoxical effect of silence is this: it teaches us how to listen, not just to others, but to ourselves. Neuroscientists from the University of Pavia discovered that when we are exposed to silence, the brain activates a default mode network, a neural system linked to introspection, empathy, and memory processing. Silence allows us to reassemble fragments of ourselves we've scattered in the noise of everyday life. In this quiet space, the brain processes unspoken grief, suppressed desires, and unexplored thoughts. Without external distractions, the mind turns inward, like light passing through a lens, focusing into a sharp beam. Monks in Tibetan monasteries, as well as prisoners in solitary confinement, describe a similar phenomenon. After days or weeks of silence, the boundaries between inner and outer worlds begin to dissolve. The self becomes both observer and observed. Is this clarity or madness? Science offers no final answer. But fMRI scans show that long periods of silence increase activity in the hippocampus, a region involved in learning and spatial orientation. This may explain why, after silent retreats, people often feel reset, as if the mental map of their life has been redrawn. Silence is not a void, it is a terrain, one that you must learn to walk, and it changes with you. What was once unbearable becomes necessary. What felt empty begins to speak. In silence, the present moment becomes sharper, more tactile. The rustle of leaves becomes a revelation. The breath, a vast ocean. The mind, not a prison, but a cathedral of infinite chambers. We begin to notice how much of what we think and feel does not come from us, but from echoes of others, family, media, collective fear, outdated beliefs. Silence acts like a sieve, separating the essential from the imposed. It is not a refuge from the world, but a return to it, more alive, more real. Like the ancient Greek concept of ataraxia, serene calmness beyond disturbance, silence offers a state in which we are no longer driven by noise, but grounded in being. And when we return from silence, we carry something invisible with us, a pause between words, a deeper breath, a slower response, a presence. This is not weakness. It is strength without aggression, power without volume. The kind of strength that listens before speaking, waits before acting, and stands still while others rush. And if you've ever met someone who carries this quiet within them, you remember it. Because silence, once integrated, becomes a force, not an absence, but a transformation.